All right, so welcome back. We have a very special episode here. This is something I promised my viewers I would do. All right, so we're gonna do a little cooking episode. This is gonna be a special one, and this is something I have never shown on the channel before. So the front shoulder of a deer is typically what people consider an undesirable cut of meat. There's a lot of tendons and sinew in there, a lot of bone, and it's a tougher cut of meat. Sadly, I see a lot of people dispose of this, which is just unacceptable in my opinion. You can at least grind that up into burger. It works perfectly fine doing that way. Grinding things up does take a tough cut of meat and make it tolerable. But I'm gonna show you a recipe today that hopefully you will never throw away another shoulder or never despise it, talk bad about it again. It's such an easy way to cook, and I think you can turn other people on to liking this venison cut. So I just harvested a deer 6 days ago. I've got a cooler behind me with all the main cuts of meat that I took off of the deer itself. I've had this cooler packed full of ice. I have been bleeding the meat out, leaving the drain open on the cooler itself, packing it with ice every day. And what this allows happens is the meat draws up, the blood exits, and you're gonna notice the meat itself is a lot of times a light colored pink. So this really helps get the gamey flavor out too. That's another key and important step whenever you're dealing with wild game, especially venison. A lot of people just don't like it because of that kind of iron wild game blood taste. Get that out, you've already got a better tasting cut of meat. So I'm gonna go ahead and forewarn you, if you don't like watching butchering of meat, you may wanna skip ahead a minute or two. I'm about to pull the shoulder out. We're gonna clean up all the extra gristle and sinew off that we can. I'm gonna show you how I prepare this. And I'm gonna do something today I have never done before, add one new step to this particular recipe that I think is gonna make it taste that much better. Okay, for starters, this was a small deer, plus this is Florida. We just don't get big bodied deer here. 125 to maybe 175 pounds. That's considered a really good deer, but kind of our average bucks are 125 plus. So you're literally talking a deer that's half the size of some of these that y'all get up north. So here is my shoulder itself. I actually took the lower section off. I do not eat that small little chunk of meat right there. I find that especially on male deer, it can just kind of really be, I don't know, too gamey. You pretty much can't get that flavor out. All right, so I've got me a gut bucket right here. I like to just take a good old fish fillet knife, and I'm going through and cutting off all the excess sinew and what people call silver skin off the top that I can get. We're not gonna be too picky here because we're gonna cook this in such a way that we're gonna break a lot of this down. But the more we can get off now, the better. But you don't have to go crazy with this step. Also to note, I'm especially trying to get off any white chunks of wild game fat. It is no good. There's just no flavor in wild game fat. Actually, there's flavor, it's just not good flavor. Also, any bloodshot meat, we want to remove as well. A dry paper towel is also good for grabbing a hold of any of this gristle and silver skin that kind of wants to slip out of your fingers. Okay, so typically in the past, I'd take the shoulder just the way you see it here. Got it trimmed up well enough for my liking. Again, we're gonna break down the rest of the silver skin in the oven or on the smoker, depending on how you decide to cook this. So something new I'm gonna try today is an injectable marinade. This Creole style butter is typically for, well, poultry and turkeys, things such as that, but I'm trying to add some flavor and some moisture into this shoulder, because let's face it, venison is a very lean cut of meat, about 97% fat-free. We wanna add all that we can. All right, so I have my injector here. I've got the bottle nice and shaken up. And I'm gonna inject this shoulder. Go way up in there like that. Look at it swelling up. Now you've got several different muscle groups here, so I'm gonna continue to work this in. Okay, now that we have this cleaned up and injected, I'll meet y'all over at the outdoor kitchen. We'll season this up, and believe it or not, we're gonna start this initial cookout by putting this on the smoker. Let's get some flavor into it. All right, so what I'm gonna do is light my smoker up here. If you're not familiar with this is a Masterbuilt Gravity Series 800. Charcoal hopper, wood chunks also mixed in there, so we're gonna get an actual charcoal and real wood smoke. I have a ton of videos on the channel for this, so we won't talk too terribly much about it. I want a little bit more pronounced smoke and flavor on the shoulder, so I'm going to put some oak wood chunks down in here so it smolders and burns throughout as well, giving me a stronger smoke. Now, as far as this shoulder goes, just want to go ahead and tell you, you don't have to smoke this. This is something I started doing a while back. It just enhances the flavor. This entire meal can be cooked in an oven in the house. I've done it many times and it works out great. So what I'm going to do is actually put the shoulder on the smoker for about an hour to an hour and a half at, say, 200 degrees. All I'm trying to do is get an extra flavor profile on it, some smoke flavor to it, but not a necessary step at all. We're gonna keep the seasonings nice and simple. I've got some Kinders, the blend, salt, pepper, garlic. Love this stuff. Go ahead and hit both sides up with that. And then we had a viewer send us in some of this Cow Camp right here. This is their dry rub seasoning, a barbecue rub seasoning. Well, since I'm gonna go ahead and put the smoky flavor and all on there, I kinda wanna get that traditional barbecue rub flavor in there as well. So we're gonna coat this up. Okay, now that we got the smoker up to temp, I'm gonna take this shoulder, put it right here on the center rack. We're gonna set the timer and smoke this for about an hour and a half. Again, this step is completely optional. This isn't the cooking. I'm just trying to add some flavor to this meat. I love a good smoky flavor. Okay, so here we are in our outdoor kitchen, and for some reason, the flies knew I was gonna record and they have shown up. So excuse that, we typically don't have them. So for starters, I've got a roasting pan right here. You can see where we're headed. That's why I keep telling y'all you could do every bit of this in the oven at the house. So I'm gonna take a couple of yellow onions, cut the cap and the root off. And you can cut the onions up typically however you'd like to put in a roast. We like them in big chunks. And we put plenty of onions and other vegetables in here because this makes a huge meal that we can eat on for days, and we are really wanting the broth and the juice that's made here. And I'm gonna tell you at the end of this how you can use it and cook this many different ways that I'm gonna show you today. All right, next I'm gonna take quite a few garlic cloves. If there's one thing you'll learn about us if you watch us cook, we love garlic, we love onions. So I am not going to cut these garlic cloves up. I'm just going to smash them to get them going and start releasing some flavor. And I really want them adding all that extra flavor to the broth and everything else that's going to form on the bottom of this pan. All right, next I'm going to take some red potatoes, and you can cut them in half, quarters. If you get the really small potatoes, you can put them in there whole. This meal is going to have to cook for a little while, so I don't like to get my potatoes cut down too far. I want to leave them in chunks about like that so they don't wind up turning too terribly soft on me. And then right behind that, we're going to do a bag of baby carrots. Okay, now that we have our roasting pan slap full of vegetables, I'm going to put a little paprika in. You can do this on top of the meat, top of the vegetables. It's all going to steam in together. A little more of that salt, pepper, and garlic blend. Love this stuff. And again, you can just never have too much garlic. And I'm gonna do an entire box of beef broth. That's 32 ounces. And depending on the size pan and how big you're making this, you can add another cup or two of water if you feel like you need to do that to make this go a little further. Okay, I've actually let this shoulder go for 2 hours. So we've got some nice smoky flavor on it, a little bit of bark. I mean, that looks good, right? So now you can see what we're doing. We have added our spices, our flavor, everything else to this. We're ready to go. So now I'm gonna bump my grill up to 350 degrees. If you're gonna do this in the oven, that's where I would start and skip the smoking step. You can make up everything I just showed you, put the raw shoulder right on top, tightly wrap it in tinfoil like we're about to do, and just set your oven to 350. All right, get one last quick look at that. Oh, that looks so good. And it smells good too, oh my goodness. So now, I'm gonna take some tin foil. We wanna get this wrapped up nice and tight. All right, and just that quick, our grill is already up to 350 degrees. I'm gonna put this on here, or you could go put it in the oven inside, but since I already have the grill lit up, ready to go, we'll do that. And I'm gonna let this go for roughly an hour. So here's the key, and here's what'll make you a believer for this shoulder. So now we've got it wrapped nice and tight. We've got all that liquid in there that's about to begin to boil, all that broth. The vegetables themselves are going to sweat out, and it's going to steam in there. And that steam's what's going to keep that shoulder nice and moist, as moist as it can. And we're going to run this up to a very high temperature. So I'm going to come back out here in an hour and start probing. I'm looking for 200 plus, like 205 in the shoulder. But more importantly, as I stick the meat probe down into the shoulder, I want to feel like it's slipping right in. Now 200 plus is way overcooked for venison, but what we're trying to accomplish here, because this is such a tough cut of meat, all that silver skin, all the connective tissues that's still in there on the bone, we need to break them down. And that's not going to happen until you get well over 200 degrees. So it's that temperature, steaming, cooking in the fashion that we're doing, that's going to keep it somewhat moist and have it to where you can literally pull the meat off the bone with a fork. Okay, are y'all ready for this? I pulled this a while ago. I've let it sit here and continue to kind of steam and cook. But take a peek at this, y'all. Look, oh, it's probably been off for an hour. Look at all the steam and juice still coming out of there. Now here's the thing, look at, look at how this deer meat has pulled completely back from the bone. All the juice that you have here, there's so much flavor in that broth. I don't know what to tell y'all other than you've just got to try it. So the potatoes are fork tender. By the way, I cooked this about 2 hours at 350. That was with the meat having already been smoked and up to temp a little. So you're probably looking at 2.5 to 3 hours at 350 if you do this straight in the oven and avoid the smoker. So here's the part I want to show y'all. When I went out and checked and knew that the meat was ready, I stuck a meat probe through the tinfoil. So whenever I seen that it actually sunk into the meat like that, I could feel it. That's called meat probe tender. I was 208 degrees in one area, 190 something in another, but I could tell the connective tissues had broken down. So I want to show y'all something. Have you ever seen what's considered one of the tougher cuts of meat on a deer shoulder, where you can just shred it off with a fork, and where it has a smoke ring? All right, did you see that? I can literally stick the fork in one of the toughest cuts of meat on a deer, twist it, and the meat just comes right off. And then you can dip it down in that broth. Oh my goodness. Without a doubt, I've said this before, I'll say it again, that is the best venison shoulder I've ever had. The injectable marinade 100% made a difference. That is so juicy. There's nothing dry about that. That's as tender as you can ever expect a deer shoulder to be. Holy smokes, that's good. Now what you can do is actually put this over rice. You can put it over mashed potatoes, or you can eat it as is. It really doesn't matter. Tear your little meat off, get some of this juice out, potatoes, everything else. We're gonna put it over white rice tonight. I think it's an excellent meal. You can also take some of the juice out. This is what I was telling you earlier. There's so many ways you can cook this meal. Take a lot of the juice out. You can put some flour in it, a gravy pack, however you do. You can make brown gravy out of this and make almost like a stew. Oh my goodness, it's so good. Some people call this stew, some people call this roast. I kind of call it a roast. Don't throw your shoulders away. Don't just write them off. Try this. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me know if you try it. Drop me a comment. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.